that's pretty much what I'll do with that. Okay, so we have been chatting to other small businesses for a while now about Brexit. Thus far, what we've established is that the Dutch government has given out lots of information to Dutch small businesses, and our government has given out zero information to small businesses. So that's been exciting, probably because they don't know what's going to happen. The Swiss government has got an entire policy which is called "Don't Mind the Gap." Well done, Switzerland. For those of you who are British, that's a joke about our tubes.
Which are just, everything runs perfectly on time and the tube isn't chaotic at all, and it's not, it's all, everything, the Brits, we're really, really great at just organising things, so Brexit's going to be a double. That was sarcasm, in case it didn't come across. I think we're all collectively suffering from Brexit fatigue, and the only way to deal with it is British humour at the moment, because it's actually really scary, and not having any reassurance from the government about what's going to happen is a little bit worrying.
So to put this in context, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, there are a lot of issues with Brexit. I can't get my head around them. I'm not sure that anybody can. Clearly the government can't. Clearly most politicians can't. Clearly a lot of people who campaigned can't. So there are more critical issues in some ways, such as the Northern Irish situation, which is the one that's most likely to cause damage and potentially a small war. But from our point of view, the reason that it's an issue is because at the moment we trade a lot within the EU borders, and that for us is much easier than trading outside of the EU. Because within a free trade zone, you can move goods around, you can move fabrics around, you can move components, you can move your own staff without really having to worry too much about anything. Mm-hmm. Now, Lydia used to work for a much bigger company.
Yes. So when I worked for a company that did the majority of their manufacturing in China, people think that, I've heard the argument that, we trade a lot with Asia as a country and there's no problem there, without realising the huge amount of organisation and effort and money and the systems that have been developed over years and years and years to keep that moving as smoothly as it can. And even so, it can really, just the smallest hitch can result in huge amounts of extra paperwork, huge amounts of extra costs. It is generally cheaper to manufacture in say, China, and so it makes it worthwhile for these companies to take on that extra cost. However, that's not really comparable to manufacturing in Europe, and so we have a couple of issues. First of which is that we have been manufacturing in Latvia, some of you know, and to import those goods to Britain, there's a big question mark over it at the moment.
If we hard Brexit, when those goods get imported to the UK, firstly we will probably face extra fees from the couriers. Secondly, we will face import duty of around 10 to 15% depending on the item. We have to look really carefully at what each item is and how it gets declared under a thing called the HSS tariff system, which if you're really bored you can go and look up on our blog. And then depending on what code it gets allocated, it gets a different amount of import duty. It also gets VAT added to it. So effectively we would be paying at least an extra 30% for everything that we make overseas and bring in. Even the goods that we make within the UK, because there's so little manufacturing left within the UK and because you can't find the fabrics or components, we would find that the price of our fabrics and supplies and metal suspender grips, which we get through $10,000 a year minimum, the cost of those would go up by about 30%. Now for those of you who are clever about VAT, I know you're going, but you can reclaim it! And that is true, but there's at least a couple of months, sometimes longer, before you can reclaim it, and for a tiny business, cash flow is life. So it's awkward. Plus, if the currency falls, the price goes up.
Yes. I've heard, for some reason, I've heard a couple of times people saying that, trade between the UK and the Commonwealth is frictionless, so how hard can it be? Yeah. So just for an example, at the moment we are kind of looking at things that we export to Canada are getting stuck in customs for between 2 to 3 months at a time. Not every parcel, but it's common enough that it's something I need to deal with several times a week at the moment. So I don't know where anyone got the idea that we have frictionless trade between the UK and the Commonwealth, because it's simply not the case. And if you've ever tried to order anything, if you're living in the UK, and you've tried to order something from, say, America, and obviously not the Commonwealth country, but if you've tried to order something from abroad and it's turned up and you've suddenly been stung with a load of import fees that you weren't expecting, I mean, that's something that we really have to look at as being a possibility every time we
send out an order anywhere.
Yeah.
So to put that in context, 50% of our orders are from countries outside of the UK. So this is going to get really painful.
And it's something that we could possibly make some kind of arrangements for if we just had any kind of certainty.
Yeah.
But we have had none really from the government, and they're really only advised to prepare, but haven't told us what to prepare for. So it's just a little bit.
Preparing.
Well, Catherine is preparing by hecking off for a couple of weeks.
No, I've got another plan as well, which is to buy a lot of loo roll. Apparently the real pinch point, so for me there's a pinch point about healthcare because I rely on quite a lot of medication, and that's going to be an issue because all of our medication systems come through the EU, so that's going to be awkward. But the other really, really crunchy points are that we import a lot of food.
Yeah.
There's probably nothing we can do about that because the issue will be the fresh food and you can't stock up on that. But apparently we import 80% of our loo roll. So
well,
I'm invested in loo roll.
I mean, yeah. I think the other plan we have is that if it all just goes down the ban, we're gonna start a new life as animal wranglers, because we spend a lot of our time. Catherine spends a lot of time wrangling her cats into and out of photo shoots. And I've been doing the same with my foster dog, who is a very furry husky and a little bit of a diva and a princess. So if it all goes wrong, that can be our new lives. You'll find us wrangling cats and dogs for a living professionally instead of flogging pants.
So this was our totally serious Brexit update. And we look forward to seeing you on the other side.
See you on the flip side.